Hi everyone! My last rant video is doing pretty well, so I thought I could dip my toes into this format again. I got a few topic suggestions, and the one I chose for today is headcanons. In case you don't know, a headcanon is basically an interpretation or an assumption of a character or story that's not part of the canon. It can be things like a character's sexuality, gender identity, ethnicity, fashion style, the list goes on. It can also be an edit of the character's official design or a drawing in the artist's personal style completely from scratch. Personally, I love headcanons. They allow fans to explore and expand upon their favorite fictional universes in unique and personal ways. It's a creative outlet that can enhance the enjoyment of the story, but of course, there are exceptions. Before I begin, remember that everything here are just my opinions, so if I get something wrong or forget to mention something, feel free to correct me, especially when I get to ethnicity headcanons. I'm always open to being educated on certain topics. I also made a community post asking for more opinions on the topic, so I'll sprinkle them in here and there. Thank you, and let's begin. There are a few issues that can arise from headcanons, or more like the people making them. For one, if a headcanon becomes very popular in the fandom, it can give the wrong impression of the story or specific character to people outside of the fandom. It happened to me with Mizu from Blue Eye Samurai. Because what do you mean? All those edits of her and Akemi being in love are just a headcanon not even close to being canon! And I'm not the only one who thinks that.
I think a lot of times headcanons completely mischaracterize the said characters. Like, don't get me wrong, I love headcanons and indulge in them myself, but sometimes people just do painfully miss the point of a character.
There were multiple comments around my script. I meant along. There were multiple comments along these lines, and I completely agree. This comment brings up a great point.
Low-key, I love headcanons and how you can project yourself onto characters you love in an unharmful way, but sometimes people really be taking it too far. Like when someone headcanons a character to be a different ethnicity, but makes the stereotypes of the ethnicity their whole personality, it's super annoying, but I feel that most of the fandoms that I'm in left that in 2020, there are definitely others that still do this. It's also annoying when you make a headcanon about ethnicity or sexuality and someone is hating on you because they don't agree with it. Like, the whole purpose is it being a headcanon. But one of the main problems I see when it comes to headcanons is that some people tend to mischaracterize the character they're making headcanons for, and it's hella weird. Main example being the Encanto and My Hero Academia fandom. Because I think headcanons are supposed to be your little twist on a character and what their personality already is, and not a whole rewrite of the character.
I agree with everything, and the last part is something that I didn't even think of at first. Some people really do change the character so much that at that point it's just a rewrite, which is also fine to do for fun, but it's just not headcanon anymore. Or on the other side of that, a headcanon can become so popular that any other interpretation gets pushed away. An example of that is Pinkie Pie from My Little Pony. A big chunk of the fandom agrees that as a human with a human skin color she would be black, including me. However, I've noticed that when someone makes her any other race, it sparks arguments, which I think is ridiculous. Just because a lot of people agree on the black headcanon doesn't mean that it's the only correct one. I mean, unless the person is like, yeah, I made her white because I hate when people make her black, then yeah, that deserves criticism. But people are allowed to make her whatever they want for non-hateful reasons. Well, with Pinkie Pie specifically, there have been arguments on whether or not she's black-coded, which means that a character is not straight up black, but their design, personality, or story mirror experiences of black people, but I'll get more into that a little later. It's okay to not like someone's interpretation or prefer more diverse headcanons. Hell, I prefer that. But it doesn't mean that you can just attack people and be rude to them over this. Just don't engage, make your own versions, or look for ones you do like. That's it. Or A headcanon can be so popular that it literally becomes canon. I'll use My Little Pony as an example again. A lot of background characters from the show became so popular in the fandom to the point they had their own backstories, relationships, personalities, and so on. And then the episode Slice of Life was made that made all these headcanons canon, which I think is really cool. Or in South Park before Creek became canon, the ship has been popular in the fandom for years. This isn't a problem, by the way, just another interesting thing I've noticed. There are also character edits. By this, I mean the kind of redesigns where you draw over the original design and add your headcanons on them, instead of drawing them from scratch. The ones that come to my mind are Bluey and South Park redesigns. A lot of people hate them, like, really bad. I'm still not sure why. Like, I guess people found them cringe, or were angry that people gave the kid characters gender and sexuality headcanons. I don't know, I don't care about these that much. I'm assuming it's mostly other kids or teenagers doing it. But I personally don't do these because, well, I don't want to, that's all. But I don't see the issue. Again, if you think it's cringy, scroll away. But I also want to say that it matters how you present the redesign. If you say it's just for fun, there's no issue, but if you present it as you fixing the original design, I don't like that. I don't like that. Fixing can only really be okay if the original design is offensive or problematic. This is why I usually add a little disclaimer on my redesigns that I do them just for fun, and I'm not in any way hating on the original media. For example, on my Monster High redesigns, some people would say, "You ruined them," or "Don't touch them, the original designs are fine," as if I ever said they weren't. Me changing them or making my own versions doesn't mean that I hate the original. Now, let's talk about specific types of headcanons, I guess. First, sexuality and gender identity headcanons, since I can actually speak on them. Usually I don't care, but there are exceptions to that. If the character's gender identity or sexuality are well established and play a role in their story, it should stay that way. I'll use Tao from Heartstopper as an example. Tao is straight. He's straight up says that he's a straight friend of the group, yet I've seen people headcanon him as bi or pan. I'm assuming it might be because he's dating Elle, who's a trans girl, which is... You can be straight and date a trans person. That's literally what the author intended, so it's weird, to say the least, to headcanon him as bi just because he's dating a trans girl. Same goes for gender identity headcanons. If it's important to the character and their story, leave that alone. I can't really think of a specific example right now, so if you know any, feel free to leave them in the comments. Other than that, I feel like adding these headcanons can make a story more interesting, even if it wasn't intended in the canon. Like making a character trans or gay can give a new view to their story, and you can relate to it better if you share those same struggles. It's really common in writing as well. I mean, not creating headcanons, but projecting your own struggles onto your characters to make them more relatable or just as a coping mechanism. So why not do it through headcanons? You know what I mean? But also, it's important to not perpetuate harmful stereotypes when you do that. This comment explains it very well.
Maybe this is stupid, but I am a stronger gal, and I hate how much people get into masculine women and the fact that they think they're actually trans. I have nothing against trans peeps, and I think they deserve representation, but I see so little of thicker, stronger, masculine women in media without having stereotypes. And almost every time there are people who are like,
"She's actually trans."
And they always reason it in some sexist, transphobic thing, and it's kind of hurtful to hear.
Yeah, the only reason she looks like that is because she grew up a man / is actually trans man and doesn't know it yet.
It's okay if you in your headcanon want to think that, but also understand that it's your headcanon and don't attack people who don't agree with you, especially when the only thing you have to say is,
"You're just transphobic."
Latest example was in Encanto, I almost cried when I saw Luisa. She's a big, strong woman with a sensitive heart, and other than her big guns, is quite stereotypically girly. Many times me and my friends who are tall, strong, thick, rough voice are treated like we are automatically strong and dominant and should fill the more manly position in the relationship. It hurts to have the stereotype, and I think it goes both ways. Just because I'm not petite and don't seem sensitive doesn't mean you can treat me like I'm some big strong man, but also don't treat every petite looking girly like she's stupid and can do shit without being helped. Anyway, this was a very long way of saying I don't like that people automatically think stronger girls are trans without any reason other than her having muscles, and it goes from headcanon to
This is actually the truth, and if you don't agree, you're blankphobic.
Again, headcanons and theories are fine, but try not to paste them in stereotypes and don't attack people.
I agree, and another example I could think of is Abby from The Last of Us. I mean, there's already so much hate surrounding her, but I remember when the game just came out, people would argue about her being trans, and it wasn't even a headcanon, it was to insult her and put her down even more, which is even worse. Sometimes people can also headcanon a character to be neurodivergent. I don't mind these, it's just important not to make it super stereotypical, you know what I mean? Like this comment says.
Also, as a neurodivergent individual, autism, ADHD, and an undiagnosed tic disorder, I don't dislike headcanoning a character as neurodivergent as long as the person doesn't do it just because the character acts, quote, silly.
And I absolutely agree. Here it's kind of hard to find this line between stereotypes and just symptoms the character might show, I think. Personally, I haven't seen this that much, but I thought I should still include it. Next, I want to talk about ethnicity headcanons. To be clear, I am very white, so I'm basing my opinion on what I've seen people of color saying this, and there's not really one straight answer. One thing I'm 100% sure on is if the character is not human, does not have a canon or implied race, then you can do whatever you want. That's what I try to stick to personally. I'll use My Little Pony as an example. Yeah, again, I know, I'm sorry, I just want to speak from experience, okay? Most characters in the show do not have a specific race, canon, or implied, so you can do whatever. There have been arguments around Pinkie Pie though. Some people say she is black-coded, others say she's not. I headcanon her as black either way, but you can share your opinion. But there are also characters that are clearly meant to have a specific race. For example, Zecora. She is obviously meant to be African. Or this pony, or the bisons, or this pony. There's probably more that I don't remember, but let's use something besides My Little Pony. Darwin from The Amazing World of Gumball is another very popular example. He has black voice actors. Cartoon Network has posted this, and this, as well as this, but people still argue about it. And a little observation, I guess, but when someone makes him black, people say, "Oh my god, he's literally not black, why does everyone have to be black?" Despite everything I just showed. But then when someone makes him white, and people obviously bring up what I just showed, all of a sudden it's, "I thought he was orange, so why does it matter?" But that's non-human characters. With human characters, it's a little more tricky. And like I mentioned, I'm basing my opinion on what I've seen people of color say about this. Some don't mind it, others say it's bad in certain situations, others straight up don't like them, and I can understand all of the perspectives. Of course, if the character's ethnicity is important to their story, leave that alone, but if it's not, and you want to edit or draw them with a different skin tone, maybe a different hair type, and adjust the features for more representation, I don't see an issue. I mean, it's not like there's a lack of white representation, so of course there wouldn't be an issue in that regard. But it gets trickier when it comes to, for example, black anime edits, where the characters are usually Asian originally. This is where I see opinions split a lot. Some people say they are erasing representation that the character already gives. Others say they're not exactly doing that, since usually when people make these edits, they make the characters Blasian. So I'm not 100% sure on this one, to be honest. I don't mind them. I think if they're well done, they look really cool, though I don't do them myself to avoid creating any possible issues. I have enough to deal with when drawing not-human characters, so... There's also an issue of whitewashing and blackwashing surrounding headcanons, and they're not the same. Whitewashing has a pretty wide meaning, but in this case I'm referring to taking a character of color and making them white for whatever reason. It can be on purpose or simply due to lack of skill. Sometimes an artist isn't that great at drawing more ethnic features, so when they draw a character of color, it doesn't turn out very well, which I think deserves criticism, but attacking them for that is stupid. Just give them some advice and give them time to learn and study, because oh my god, some people really think you have to immediately know everything. But anyway, blackwashing, it's not a thing, but it's referring to taking a non-black character and making them black, but the two are not the same. For one, whitewashing has a long history and is directly rooted in racism, and in terms of headcanons, when someone whitewashes a non-white character, it's usually for racist reasons, to make them better, and don't even get me started on the most obvious bait ever that people still fall for, because, of course. On the other hand, blackwashing is done for more representation, literally the opposite of racism. I'll link a couple videos where this is explained much better than I ever could, but I hope you still get what I was trying to say. It's worded really well in this comment.
I don't think blackwashing is a thing. I hate when people take POC reimaginings or white characters and say,
"Oh, so I can draw Miles Morales as a white person, and it's the same thing as drawing Peter Parker as a black person, and if you don't agree, then you're racist against white people."
literally no. 90% of the characters in our media are white. You have your pick of characters to represent your race. It literally hurts nobody to make a white character non-white. If you wanna say you can't relate to them as much because they aren't white anymore, maybe ask yourself why your race is the deciding factor as to whether or not you can see yourself in a character. If a character is shy and clumsy, but also compassionate and willing to step outside their comfort zone to help the ones they love, and you see yourself in that as a white person viewing the show, literally how does it hurt you if they happen to be maybe Korean? How does that prevent you from seeing yourself in them or relating to them? It shouldn't. But maybe, across the planet, there's some little girl who is also shy and clumsy but compassionate and willing to help the people that she loves. And she's Korean. That character could mean the world to her. And reimagining or headcanoning a character to be non-white does in fact help POC to connect more deeply to the character, because their race has far deeper implications on their life experiences in a lot of ways than us being white. Taking a white character and making them black for a headcanon would likely have changes to their backstory and history that would deepen that person headcanoning them's connection to the character. They could even draw inspiration from their own experiences and impact them on the character. If I take a black character and make them white, I am very likely stripping them of a massive portion of their identity and past, and like I said, there is a massive trove of white characters I could be latching onto rather than slapping POC in the face. Of course, if a character's race is significant to their story canon somehow, race swapping them becomes a bit more questionable. Like if you took T'Challa, Black Panther, and decided to make him Hispanic, that would interfere with the significance of his heritage and race to his backstory, and while you may not be whitewashing him, you're still taking representation from another POC group.
Of course, there are people that do this and call it fixed or better because their designs are more diverse, and I do not support that either. I also feel like people are throwing these words around too much. I have been called racist and a blackwasher before for drawing Rarity from My Little Pony as a dark-skinned woman, because she's white, like the color white. That's still fascinating to me. Now I'll read a couple comments on this.
As long as you're not being racist or anything, they're great in my opinion.
Absolutely agree on this.
I think that headcanons can be a super fun way to see yourself in media, as long as you're not perpetuating harmful stereotypes or overcompensating the existing rep. The Encanto fandom comes to mind.
Yep.
They're all cool, as long as someone doesn't change the race of a character that's already a minority, then I don't mind.
That's a fair point as well.
I once made a headcanon / redesign for Willow from the Owl House. In my redesign I made her have a darker skin tone because she is canon Blasian. The amount of racist comments, I just hate the blackwashing thing, like, just let me redesign some characters I like, bro.
I agree with this as well, especially if the character is canonically Blasian and you wanted to play around with that.
I think headcanons are a wonderful way to incorporate more diversity or personal liking into a media. I personally headcanon a lot of characters as A's because I am. Something like the A spectrum is extremely rare in media, and the only way I could get my representation is making my own. As long as it's not gross or harmful, I think any headcanons are great, no matter how out of character or against canon. As long as it's not hurting anyone or pushing harmful stereotypes, it's fine and fun.
Definitely agree, especially about the array spectrum not having a lot of representation in media. I'm on that spectrum as well, still figuring out where exactly, shit's confusing, but it's cool to sort of project that on fictional characters, though I do it more with my own characters rather than already existing ones, but still. This next one is pretty long, but I found it really interesting and wanted to include it as well.
I'm going to list some core elements of headcanon. 1. I think that headcanons were originally a way to see yourself represented. I think it's actually more accurate to say that's how they start out. I think they actually evolve into rewrites, which is great. I personally have a few Frankenstein-inspired characters that take different directions from the book, and I'm very happy with their character arcs. I think it's a good way to develop character relationships, but also that this is just a more intentional way of telling people you thought a character was a good person. What I mean is that I used to think Stella from Winx was way more annoying and not nearly as compassionate as she was. So I never cared for her and pretended like she was nicer, but that process is very different than how I came to headcanon her now, if that makes sense. I think headcanons are more like rewrites, but that not all of them form more fun, better, or more enjoyable characters. 2. I think that headcanons happen when characters are coded in certain ways to hint or more accurately parody their race, ethnicity, orientation, gender identity, religious background, etc. I also think some characters appear to be coded on accident. For example, in the 2009 Strawberry Shortcake reboot, Blueberry Muffin looked Asian to my Asian kid self. I thought they were being coded. Turns out no, the show's representation was left to Cherry Jam, the explicitly Chinese but really just East Asian character, and Orange Blossom, who was Black American. I also thought the Plum Girl was mixed. Mind you, I'm a light-skinned Southeast Asian person who's half white. But my point in saying this is that when I saw Moff Kai's video making them D&D characters, they used the original characters from before any of the 2000 reboots, and upon rechecking the 2009 version, they no longer looked Asian. But I still headcanoned them as such because it was important to my childhood self, since Cherry Jam was a minor character. I believe I've said this before, but the only reason for some people saying Rarity is Asian is because of the contrast between her hair color and her skin tone, and her slanted eyes. I'm not mad if people don't see that and headcanon her as Asian, but I know a lot of people do it out of ignorance or racist interpretations. 2. Subsection A. I thought the professor from the Powerpuff Girls was not coded but just straight up Asian, lol. 1. He's a smart but dorky Asian man stereotype. 2. His hairstyle looked like a popular one Asian American men had and have now. Plus, Buttercup fit another Asian stereotype, a really popular one at the time of the original show, but they weren't. I only mentioned this to say that the intention not being there was baffling. 2. Subsection B. I think that when I saw Mofkai's video, I was initially disappointed, not in them, but kinda in them. I think it's too easy to fall into pitholes with redesigning Winx, Strawberry Shortcake, Monster and Ever After High, etc. because they do have lots of white characters that aren't diverse outside of race, i.e. disability, hair, medical issues, etc. And that when I see no change in these shows like Strawberry Shortcake and especially Ever After High, which was definitely meant to make up for the white conservative family, Monster High wasn't pulling in since they did have a lot of representation by the standard of the time. I just think that when it comes to headcanons from artists, that the whiteness of the media should be recognized, and the excuses given when they've gotten very nice and polite questions show they don't like to see these characters like that. 3. I think when reboots don't change their characters' race, when the show is predominantly white-coded characters, then that's harmful. Because of headcanons, for Black Indigenous people of color in America and the UK relied on headcanons when they didn't see themselves in media, main point of 3 is to say that they are important to people and should be acknowledged because that was often the reason for them. 4. I think that headcanons are sometimes just self-inserts, which isn't wrong. I think some people are also a little weird for their choices, but I'm also a bigger weirdo about art, lol. I do genuinely think that some headcanons are harmful and or just people using the designs of the characters I see in the My Little Pony fandom the most to be stand-ins for their characters. It's okay sometimes, but usually leads to weirdo behavior. But fandoms are full of niches and that we should stay in them on principle. A show does not have one fandom with subgroups, it should be viewed as having multiple fandom groups.
I wanted to include this one because, obviously as a white person, I never had this problem of having to create my own interpretations of characters to be able to identify with them. They were and still are everywhere in media. So instead of just talking out of my butt, I thought it would be better to include someone's actual experience. So the opinions are pretty much, they're cool as long as they're not offensive, which I agree with 100%. Same goes for body and fashion headcanons, I think. Just have fun with that as long as you're not being offensive on purpose. God, scripting this was tough. I definitely missed some things. It's a pretty broad topic and I tried really hard to put together everything I could think of, but if you have more things to add, the comments are open, of course. In conclusion, while headcanons can be a fun and creative way for fans to interact with their favorite stories, it's also important to maintain a healthy balance. Fans should be open to new developments in the original media, respect the author's intentions, and be mindful of the line between headcanon and canon. It's also okay to not like someone else's interpretations, these are all just opinions after all, but there's no need to argue about them either, just have fun with them. Be mindful of others, and stay in the non-offensive line, you know what I mean? But that's it from me for today. Thank you so much for watching. You can subscribe, like the video, yada yada. I already said that you can comment like 5 times. You can check out my other socials on the screen and description. Stay safe and bye!